Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Bad Movie Night. My name's Chris, and tonight I checked out that Hulu original that just came out based on the Clive Barker book series, The Books of Blood. I'm a pretty big Clive Barker fan. All of his movies I generally really like. And of course, a lot of his shorts and other stories have become, iconic horror franchises or horror movies like Candyman, Hellraiser, and the underrated Lord of Illusions. So, what they did is they took basically two stories from the Books of Blood, one being the Book of Blood and two on Jerusalem Street, and then created an anthology movie out of it. I gotta say, I was very disappointed in this, and I'm gonna get into spoilers, mostly because I need to talk about the endings to these things. So the ending of a movie is incredibly important. I think that's obvious. If you don't nail it at the end, you're gonna leave a bad taste in people's mouths. Now for shorts, it's even more important in some ways because you don't have the journey. An hour and a half long movie, there's ups and downs and things to latch on to that you can really enjoy. And when it doesn't come quite together at the end, sure, it's disappointing, but it might not completely ruin the experience for you. But with shorts, they kind of live or die by their end because there's just not enough time to develop things. This movie kind of does the dumb thing. The thing that I do a lot with my short films is that they make them too ambitious and too complicated. I have seen the comment go around that Clive Barker is a great world builder, but his movies just don't translate well to film. I really don't see that. Sure, Hellraiser is in some ways a cosmic horror movie where the ideas can be so massive and ambitious that, when you show it on film, it's never gonna match the scale that it's described as or that your mind can imagine. Good horror for me is one that is more psychological because my brain can create something scarier than they can ever show me on a movie generally. We had like that movie Bird Box that was about not being able to look at the monster, and if you saw it, you died. And people were complaining because you never saw the monster. But if you saw the monster, it would just be a guy in a CGI monster or a guy in a suit. And you would immediately recognize that. And then from that point on, it would kind of lose the whole effect of describing something so insanely scary. So a lot of Clive Barker stuff does have things like that. I'm mostly thinking of Hellraiser and Lord of Illusions. So what I wanted out of this anthology, I guess, was just something a little less generic. I wanted some sort of deeper horror, something that you can think about, something that leaves, an impression, much like Hellraiser did for me the first time I saw it, or Lord of the Illusions. But you have nuggets of good ideas in here. For instance, the first story, which is about a young girl named Jenna, who suffers from misophonia, which, I've heard of this, I was never familiar with it, but essentially it's just she can't handle noises. They cause her mental distress, and it's just too much, it's overwhelming for her. And that is a great idea for a horror movie, and perhaps it's been covered before, I don't know though. And it's lightly covered in this movie because it makes it seem like it's such an important plot device and element to the story that is quickly forgotten. It's so stupid because it's the most interesting thing about the story. From then on out, it becomes just some generic, horror by numbers with twists that make absolutely no sense and motivations of characters that make absolutely no sense either. The plot feels nonsensical. It's like they complicate it for no reason. And that goes back to that thing when I was talking about with a short, no. If you're gonna make something that's 40 minutes long, at that point maybe just expand it or trim it down because it feels like it's a halfway between both. It doesn't feel like a satisfying feature because not all the ideas are fully explored, and it feels way too long for a short where it gets too complicated. Compounded on the fact that it feels kind of like a PG-13 Blumhouse movie you'd see on a Friday night, it's just really disappointing. There's a lack of style through this whole thing. It feels generic as fuck. It feels like your most generic horror movie you've ever seen, except for the second story, where they have a sprinkle of some Clive Barker-esque visuals that I kind of imagine. The second story is actually kind of interesting in its setup, where you're mixing the theme of science and faith. And you have a medium and a scientist, skeptic person teaming up to create some sort of new idea. This has kind of been explored before in the John Carpenter movie Prince of Darkness. But I like that science and faith angle, but again, it's kind of quickly abandoned and just used as a plot device. Now, there's two moments in this second story, though, that kind of feel like homages to Clive Barker movies. By the end, one of the main characters kind of looks like a Cenobite with all of his skin kind of grafted with words and stuff from ghosts, I guess. And then you have a quick flash of a guy in a church where he sees a visual of a woman, and it's very haunting, and it kind of looks like the visuals from the flashbacks in Lord of the Illusions. I mean, it's a high bar, I think, anyways. But there's always visuals and stuff like that where I can remember from Hellraiser and Lord of the Illusions, because they were so effectively done, and they're so, I don't know what it is about his movies, they feel grittier or something, but this just feels neutered in a lot of ways. It feels like a TV show, which is fine if they wanted to make it like a TV show. Actually, I think it would have made more sense if they just would have like taken every one of these stories and turned it into a TV episode and made it like an hour long. That might have made more sense. This just felt like half measures the whole way. I always thought Clive Barker made more elevated horror. It was more thoughtful. And this just kind of goes back to like the cheap thrills and just tropey crap that we've seen in so many other things, which is weird because there's so many interesting ideas within this book to pull from. And for whatever reason, interesting ideas that they got, they abandoned them as plot devices and just use cheap jump scares the whole time to try and scare you. Disappointed. It's out on Hulu now, though, if you're interested in checking it out. Maybe I'm just an asshole. There's a good chance I'm an asshole. So let me know down below if you checked it out and what you thought. And then go watch Lord of Illusions, because nobody ever watches that movie or talks about that movie, and I fucking love that movie. That's definitely one that I think is underrated. So that's going to do it for Books of Blood. Hope you liked it. We're going to catch you here next time on Bad Movie Night. Thanks for watching.